Noted.
Thanks.
The Avon Otakaro Network, Evan Smith and Kyle Sutherland. People have had a deputation presentation circulated. Yes, should have that on your desk.
Kia ora koutou. Evan and Kyle, on behalf of Avon Otakaro Network, thank you very much for this opportunity to comment on the proposed Global Settlement Agreement. Firstly, we'd like the others, to congratulate Council and Brendan and his negotiating team on a good sound proposal, considering the complex circumstances. We believe it provides a clarity on the way forward. It's an enabling approach, and you've seen the passion and commitment and energy from the communities surrounding the red zone. We want to get on with stuff. We want to be enabled to do stuff, and this is a good step forward in enabling that to happen. And to quote the proposal itself, we think the agreement does provide a solid foundation for locally led regeneration. We endorse the proposed outcomes with their focus on people, momentum, value and future. The focus on momentum is particularly important to us in Avon Otakaro Network because currently regeneration momentum has come to a grinding halt in the corridor. There are still significant bureaucratic and funding roadblocks and barriers to any progress with transitional use, let alone any long-term use. The global settlement begins to provide pathways to clear these, and that's extremely important. But they need to be actioned, and they need to be actioned with some urgency, or significant opportunities will be lost. We also currently strongly endorse the proposed transitional planning for governance of the residential red zone, including the corridor. In particular, the phased approach, the approach to support, strengthen, improve and enable red zone regeneration, the immediate steps, next steps that have been identified, and particularly the community co-governance model that's been identified with a significant role for Ngāi Tahu and Mana Whenua. We have advocated for such an approach and wish to thank you for hearing us, but the proof as always is in the pudding. We would caution that the approach must support and not compromise the corridor regeneration plan, which communities have invested so much time and effort into. It must not be an opportunity to relitigate this. It needs to ensure all future uses also align with a framework of clearly defined guiding principles and strategies on resilience to natural hazards, on Indigenous biodiversity, on cultural narratives and aspirations, and on community engagement. Engagement with neighbouring local communities, with former residents, and with the wider metropolitan residents. It should include communities and stakeholders in decisions about what to prioritise in terms of land parcel conveyancing in the corridor by reviewing current proposal pipelines, and there are substantial pipelines. Include communities and stakeholders in what transitional and long-term governance could look like. That discussion is yet to be really had in the public arena. Recognise the unique nature of the different red zone areas in the governance structures. One size does not fit all. They're very different areas in very different situations. Make local representation within the governance ward-based rather than community board-based for more equitable representation geographically, but also add representation of the metropolitan view. It's not all about the local residents. There is a need for urgency to ensure more opportunities are not lost before greater momentum can be unlocked. We need interim action before December 2019 when the Working Party is meant to report back. We cannot wait another 6 months for progress to be made. We're already losing good opportunities and good people. Also, we note the reference to environmental health in the document. It needs to be explicit that this means ecological health. There is a difference between the two. We need to make provision for a one-stop shop, fast-track application process for funding within the residential red zones for transitional use, which includes an integration of council, Crown in terms of DIA and DOC, and philanthropic administered funding streams. Look at new ways of doing this stuff, an example of testing new and innovative ideas while expediting regeneration momentum.
We endorse the Red Zone Agreement, in particular the transfer of Red Zone lands for $1, and we note there the exception of the lands in the Port Hills, and the transfer at essentially nil cost, as that will assist greatly in the viability of these regeneration projects. And the early settlement date of 1st of July 2020 for all Red Zone lands except obviously Port Hills. However, we would caution that although we support the transfer of Corridor Red Zone as multiple titles, we advocate strongly for retention of all such titles in single public ownership in perpetuity to retain the integrity of the corridor, whether that ownership remains with council or is subsequently transferred to some form of public land trust. It is our strong view that any component land uses, including residential housing or commercial uses, should be only on a leasehold basis. We are concerned that the current settlement does not prevent the corridor lands being subdivided and components stripped off for sale by the future public owner as a revenue-generating exercise. With regard to this, we do note that any net proceeds from sale or lease post-settlement will be split 50-50 between the Crown and the Council. It is unclear to us whether this is in perpetuity. The feasibility and viability of projects could be significantly impacted if the Crown demands a 50% commercial or a market rate return, particularly where there are important non-economic benefits to consider. We also note that not all council lands in the corridor will necessarily be included in reconfigurated titles. We would urge that this is given careful consideration. For example, our experience working with Anzac Drive Reserve is that there are many titles within the 11-hectare reserve with a variety of statuses and encumbrances. The land reconfiguration under the GCR Act is an opportunity to cleanse and consolidate these titles to more readily enable regeneration. This is an opportunity that should not be missed, but could be if we're not careful. We also note that Council will be responsible for all ongoing maintenance costs from the settlement date. We are concerned that the maintenance of the corridor following the settlement will not be to the same general level of service as currently undertaken. The difference in maintenance, in our experience, between the standards of Crown and Council lands within the corridor currently is a stark contrast. That is not to say, however, that the maintenance approach could not be improved. For example, to reduce reliance on glyphosate spray for weed management, as well as support the regeneration of Indigenous biodiversity. This could also greatly increase the contribution of community volunteerism in this, via, for example, the Community Guardians approach. We would also alert you to the fact that there is no recognition in the settlement of the considerable cost of removal of invasive weed species that are prevalent throughout the Crown-owned corridor lands, for example, sycamores, hollies and ivies.
So in conclusion, yes, the terms of this proposal are somewhat of a compromise. However, we believe it is a workable compromise, giving us a clear foundation to move forward. We urge you to approve the proposal while noting the concerns we have highlighted. This agreement provides the certainty of a sound pathway forward that is so dearly needed to unlock the regeneration logjam in the corridor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you. I was just looking at the specific terms around the Waimakariri residential red zone, and one of the things that it identifies is a requirement to try and get a highest level of economic benefit, out of the land as possible. That maximum financial return. That hasn't been repeated in this proposal. So would you say that was a good thing, given, I'm just picking up on your point that you made about the significance of looking for value that may not be financial?
Yes. I think this is perhaps an improvement, but I still don't think this is actually sufficient protection. I agreed with what Rob Kerr said before, and I think the organisation has that view as well. I think it's something to be aware of, particularly if it's in perpetuity. That puts enormous encumbrance on what's going to happen on the way forward and could actually make things not viable or feasible.
Yeah, I think in Waimakariri it's 999 years. Yeah. That's longer than I'm going to live.
Yeah, likewise.
Phil?
Thanks, Evan and Cole. Just around your concerns about invasive weeds in the area, are you really saying to us, perhaps as a council, that you'd like to see us give much greater priority to our biodiversity strategy to ensure we have, safe and sustainable water?
Yeah, I think there's, as Carl said, there's a need for a number of strategies with respect to what goes into the red zone from here on out. That means there's some coherence and alignment with everything and integration. What we plant and what we remove is core to that, and it's really important. At the moment, there's a lot of plants in there that, if they're allowed to get hold, that will spread everywhere else. I know around where I used to live, there's sycamore trees there now that are sprouted from saplings because they haven't been dealt to. And because when we used to live there, we used to mow lawns and weed gardens and stuff like that. So a lot of those plants are taking over in places, and they're actually out-competing some of the natives.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's